Emily Godley, European champion, 71 kilograms. How does that sound?
Pretty good.
And has it sunk? It's almost 2 weeks now. Has it sunk in yet?
No, not at all. I don't think it probably will until I retire, to be honest.
Yeah. You're still in the war zone, I suppose. And how was Moscow? So when I think of Moscow, I think of Rocky IV. I think of those lovely leather jackets with these sort of like fluffy bits. So how was the Moscow experience?
Yeah, it was pretty good. Didn't get to see much of it, to be honest, because you're just like in your own little bubble.
And I suppose COVID means you can't go anywhere.
Yeah, and then they tend to fly you home as soon as you've competed. So it was like straight in and then wait to compete and then straight out. And
the flight home was a bit of an ordeal, I understand.
It was all a bit of an ordeal. I don't really recommend travelling during a pandemic.
You had to get a test or something, didn't you?
Yeah, I got to Moscow airport at like 4 a.m. in the morning, and then they said...
And was still like...
Yeah, I had like 2 hours sleep. They said, you need to go and get an express COVID test, even though we'd had like a 72-hour one done the day before. So it's not what we needed at that time in the morning. So we had to run downstairs, go and queue up, like try and work out what the hell was going on with all this Russian text everywhere, and then
vodka everywhere.
Yeah. I wish we had some at that point. So we got this test done. Then we ended up running for our plane and managed to get there in the end. And then a nice 8-hour layover in Amsterdam.
Yeah, plenty of things you can do in 8 hours in Amsterdam.
Well, yeah, if you're allowed to leave.
When you say you were travelling, it was you?
On the way back, it was me and my teammates, Sarah Davies and Zoe Smith.
Yeah, and you had one teammate still there who we'll come on to, who was competing the next day.
Well, a few days later.
She was there on her own. So you kind of went through, shall we say, a long process to get to be a European champion in terms of the prep, and we're going to talk about the prep in detail later. Was it worth it?
Yeah.
So I would say, having been around you for say the 6 months, whatever it was prior, that your preparation for the event was probably less than ideal for a number of reasons, which we're going to come on to. But hopefully in this podcast, one of the things that we can really get across to people is the value of perseverance, and how many times I've probably said that word to you. But we should probably start by letting people know this prep was rough. Is that a good word?
I don't even think that describes it, to be honest.
Right.
Just like the worst comp prep I've ever had.
Yeah, and of course, me being ultra positive, you always knew you were going to win, didn't you?
You did.
I did.
I didn't.
I did.
Yeah, I had a lot of doubts.
Yeah. Well, perhaps we'll touch on those. I was very confident because, and I think we talked about this a couple of times, I do believe that within all athletes, or perhaps within all people, there is maybe an extra 5 to 10% accessible to what I call altered state, whether that's adrenaline on the day, whether that's just that they're more focused, whatever it is. So even though perhaps in your preparation, maybe your lifting wasn't quite what you expected, you had a number of things that were barriers, I was always very confident you put it out on the day.
Yeah, I think the last few years of my competitive career, I've been able to access that extra 10% quite a lot. So I think for this prep, I was like 100% reliant on that, and on that adrenaline on the day.
Yeah.
I knew I needed that, so luckily it came out.
We're going to talk about your actual lifts in a bit, but the thing that strikes me is when you did your 98k snatch.
Yeah.
That to me was the typical example of, like a tiger coming into your cave, or whatever analogy people want to use, whereby it's just what I call nut up time, and the adrenaline I can imagine was, watching the lift, my adrenaline, was pretty sky high. I had to take a lot of methionine to come down that night, do you know what I mean? But okay, so we'll come back to the event. I want to go right back to the beginning. I want to go kind of to try and give people an idea about your story, and along the way to try and highlight some things about what kept you in the sport. For example, a lot of young females stop sports around 16, 17, so I'm interested in things like that. And then I want to get into the competitive history, and we'll talk about some of the events you've done, and then one that's coming up in the future. which might be your last one if it's time for retirement. Yeah. So tell me about the beginning. So when did you start with, say, Olympic weightlifting, and what was it that got you interested?
I started learning the Olympic lifts in about, I can't remember what year it was, 2007, 2008.
Yeah.
Because I was a pole vaulter, so my pole vault coach was like, you need to start doing extra S&C.
Yeah.
So you basically got to throw yourself upside down.
Yeah.
So you need like a degree of muscle mass and strength to support like the extra training that I was doing. So he sent me off to like a specific weights coach at Crystal Palace and said, go and learn like the basic Olympic lifts. And so away I went and started to quite enjoy it. And my weights coach was like, you could be quite good at this. So what about changing sports? And I was like, oh no, I'm not just going to change sports like that. And there was a part of me as well that was like, I don't want to do weightlifting. Like it's a bit of a brutish sport. So
brutal sport.
Yeah.
How good were you at pole vault? Were you sort of county level, national level?
I represented the England junior team.
Right.
Like once in an indoor competition, but I was never going to be like world champion.
Why were you never going to be world champion?
I think just a number of things. Like physically, I wasn't like the other girls. I was a bit short, a bit stocky. Didn't really have that kind of gymnasticy type of technique. I was a bit more like rough around the edges.
Yeah.
And just mentally I struggled a little bit with pole vault. I think you've got to be slightly unhinged to throw yourself over a bar like that.
I think you've got to be slightly unhinged to throw yourself under 129 kilograms.
I'd much rather do that.
I think you're unhinged anyway, so yeah.
So I don't know, I just kind of knew that it wasn't the sport that was going to take me to where I wanted to be.
How old were you when you made the transition?
18.
18.
Yeah.
And when you first started the Olympic weightlifting, would you say it was like an immediate duck to water? This is me. Will it take you some time to really think, okay, well, I can be good at this?
A bit of both, really. I moved quite well. I had decent technique. You know, my mobility was good. I knew I was strong anyway. I used to like power snatch and power clean all the time. Found it really hard to do the full lifts.
Sure.
So it took me like several years to kind of master that.
I can relate to that.
I think a lot of athletes do really, because they learn like they're just powerful, so you don't bother squatting down if you don't need to.
Yeah.
It took me a few years, but before I knew it, I was like basically in line to qualify for the Commonwealth Games, because the standard, like compared to now, was quite low.
Sure.
So my coach was like, if you lift XYZ, then you could actually go to the 2010 Commonwealths.
And did you go to the 2010 Commonwealths?
I did. I just got the qualifying standard.
And how many years had you been, say, weightlifting properly when you went to the Commonwealth Games?
2.
Wow.
Or just under.
Wow, that is incredible.
Yeah, it was. You could tell that I was a bit inexperienced.
Yeah, but my point is I think like I say, I think a lot of young ladies, maybe a lot of young men as well, give up sports 16, 17, 18, and that's why I'm really interested in this point about you went from having never done it, and we can come on to whether athletes are born or made, but within 2 years to competing at like the major championships. I'd hope people watch this and think, wow, maybe I can do that. Maybe a 17, 18-year-old girl thinks, wow, maybe I can do that if I go for it. Okay, so how did the first Commonwealth Games go?
Wasn't ideal. But it was a massive learning experience. Wouldn't change it now.
Yeah.
So got out to Delhi. That was a funny games anyway, because there was all this terrorist stuff. So we had to stay within the village. It was all very had to be secure and things like that. Definitely got the old Delhi belly.
Right.
Yeah.
Good
body weight.
There, yeah.
Not when you go 3 kilos underweight. I was feeling a bit rough anyway, and even on the day I was in the warm-up room and I was running off because I was just so unwell. But I just had nothing to give on the platform. I'd walk out there, and I think you do think it's just nerves, but I was the opposite of nervous. So I was just flat as a pancake, and I just missed all 3 snatches the same way, just all in front, and it just felt extremely devastating. So I was crying I was crying my eyes out in the warm-up room. My coach just threw a towel over my head because there's like all cameras and everything, and they were like, no one needs to see you like this. Just threw a towel over my head, and I just felt extremely sorry for myself.
Yeah, sounds like a very good coach protecting his athlete. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what kept you going then? I mean, I think there's two parts to that question really is. One, when you were sort of in that 17, 18-year-old age group, what kept you going? Was it that you saw, this could be a career? And then when you had that negative experience, what kept you going then? What was it that drew you to sort of keep competing?
I think I've always had a goal of wanting to go to the Olympics. Like that's always been a long-standing goal. Wasn't ever sure which sport would be the one to take me there, but I just knew I was highly motivated, and that was like nothing else mattered. I just wanted to achieve that. So that's just been an underlying goal for me throughout all my sporting career, before weightlifting, like all of that. And then obviously doing really badly at this event was like I just felt like I never wanted to do that again. Yeah. And I had to prove to myself that I was better than that. And it just kind of relit the fire, I suppose, and just I got straight back into training. And that is very interesting in that I can imagine that for maybe 50% of people, that experience might have been, I'm never doing that again, get a million miles away. And then for another 50% of people, maybe it's exactly as you reacted, which is, like you, I need to get back on the horse sort of thing. Why, around say 16, 17, 18, there's a lot of statistics about young girls stop exercise. So if they have been involved in a sport, around that age, they just give up. And there are various reasons, put out there as to why that happens. What was your experience when you were around that age group? Were there, say, a lot of others in the sport or in your sport, and they fell away? Yeah.
And why do you think they fall away?
I think I have seen a few, especially female weightlifters, kind of, they're really, really great at a young age, and then they just kind of fall off the wagon a little bit. And I think for a lot of girls, they seem to be, like some of them seem to be pushed into it a little bit by their parents. I've seen a lot of pushy parents kind of say to them, this is what you're doing, take them to training, like they're the ones behind the athlete, kind of making sure that they do all the work. But it's the athletes that, have got supportive parents, supportive people around them, but they actually want to achieve themselves, that tend to carry on and just keep working at it. Especially in weightlifting, I feel like people realise that it's a long-term sport. Like you're never going to achieve overnight. You've got to really, really persist and get years and years of experience under your belt.
You need a PhD in your craft, really, don't you? It's
basically.
It's a skill. I think people would think it's a strength-based sport, and strength is an element of it, but to me, it's a skill-based sport. Yeah. It's so technical, and having tried to get better myself, I think the technical element of the sport is vastly underrated. What do you think would be better? So I've often talked to people about when I grew up, how much more it seemed there was more opportunity, more volunteers that ran cricket teams, football teams, rugby, whatever it was. I'm not sure that exists. What do you think would help more young girls get into and stay in some form of athletics or competition?
I think just having access to like the correct training, coaches, and like competitions, events where they can just get involved and give it a go.
Like our event.
Which we'll talk about. Cheeky little plug.
Yeah, cheeky plug, yeah.
I think if I hadn't have been told to go and give it a go by my coach, I would never have found weightlifting. Yeah. And I know lots of my teammates, actually probably about 90% of my teammates, have all come from other sports. Yeah. Diving, gymnastics, athletics, like everyone kind of transitions across. Yeah. Because there's hardly any girls out there that start weightlifting from scratch. Yeah. So I think if we can get more girls into weightlifting, like from a young age, they don't have to actually be lifting heavy weights. It's just technical work.
Technical, definitely.
When they're of the right age, you can add a little bit of weight on and away you go.
I think we're probably a generation now where I think young girls like coming to the gym and like lifting weights, as opposed to, say, when I started in this business 20 years ago, I think women were much more fearful of lifting weights. I'm a great believer, as you say, that I think there needs to be a bit more opportunity, whether that be sort of funded, voluntary, whatever. I do think think that we're in a kind of an era where young girls have so many more distractions with social media and bits and pieces. I don't think that's good for them. And I think the best thing that could happen is, as you say, to try different things. And we think about my daughter went through, say, karate and swimming and cricket. And now she obviously is heavily into Olympic weightlifting with you. And hopefully, as she goes to the Olympics and Commonwealth Games, I'll be a very proud dad doing that. But I think as a parent, what I've always tried to do is just give them the opportunities to try things.
Yeah.
But as you say, if those opportunities don't exist, then they can't attend.
No.
Okay, so that was the early days. I want to ask you a philosophical question now, which we ask everyone. We asked Dodge when he was on the podcast about if an athlete is born or made. So if I said to you, were you born or made? Do you come down on the side of what kind of it's my genetics, I was just born this way, or was it more environment, opportunity, the coaches that you've worked with, that type of stuff?
I'd definitely say made, because...
You're not allowed to say made, because I want to... Yeah, made, yeah. Go on.
Why not?
What did Dodge say? Dodge said, no, they're all born, didn't he? I always say made, and Dodge was like, no, they're all born. I
think, you obviously have to be born with some kind of, a couple of physical attributes.
Yeah.
But, if I look at my parents, no offence to them, but they're not sporting at all.
Right.
So... my mum would have said that she was a little bit, but there wasn't any kind of obvious, this girl's going to be a sports star. It was more from the age of 5, she took me to my local athletics club, and I was doing that 3 times a week. And when I was at school, I was in every sports team, and just I was that person that would just want to do everything. And I think that getting those hours in of exercise and training just led me to, I was set up and ready to go to start a proper sporting career.
That's kind of the general advice in what they call the LTAD, long-term athletic development plan, which is that expose children to as many different things. So there's a thing about early specialisation being a bad idea. Like you say, if someone just weightlifts from the age of 5, then they might miss out on some other things.
Yeah.
I am 100% that athletes are made. I'm all about environment. Do I think that, say, your biomechanics, your muscle fiber type, your pronation angles, your neural, how well you neurologically work? Yes, definitely. That's a factor. Do I think I can ever be Usain Bolt? I don't think so. But I definitely think that there's a lot of people that might give up on something because they might say to themselves, well, I'm just not made that way.
Yeah.
As opposed to more people that say, well, let's just see how good I can get. So we definitely come down on the side of made, yeah?
Yeah, agreed on that one.
Cool. Right, now I want to talk a little bit about your sport, the sport of weightlifting. So I know a little bit about it.
Yeah.
And I know that it's not particularly well funded, and that there are maybe some dark sides to it. So tell us first of all about the kind of support and the funding that you get as a professional Olympic weightlifter who tries to train 4 or 5 hours a day.
I don't get any financial support to train. So we did, before the Rio Olympics, we had about 2.5 years where we got a little bit of national lottery funding through UK Sport. And so we got an APA grant every month that allowed us to train. So we were all full-time working, so it meant that we could reduce down to part-time hours. And that grant just supplemented our income a little bit. So it was good at the time, definitely saved a little bit of money. But the pressure that comes with that money is almost counterintuitive, what it was for me.
Yeah.
Because UK Sport don't care about what you've got going on in your life or what happened on this day or that day. They see a result, they're like, that's not good enough, cut your money, or whatever. So I don't know, I didn't think it was a major part of my career that helped me to improve my performance or anything like that. It was very nice to have, but didn't make a difference really. Are
the other countries girls? So obviously just watched European Championships, and obviously Bulgaria were a country that seemed to have a number of lifters, a number who the commentator I thought was very good. I think it was Michaela Breeze, was very open and honest about the number of people that had failed drug tests.
Well, she got a fair bit of backlash for that.
Well, I was just going to say that because I actually admired it. I don't know Michaela Breeze, I've met her a few times in lectures and stuff, but I actually admired what she said.
Yeah.
Because as a viewer, I do want to know that. And I also was, and I said this to you the other day, was mistaken. I thought that the Olympics was once they'd failed a drug test, I thought they were lifespan, which is obviously wrong. We'll come on to, but I thought Michaela Breeze did a very good job in letting us know as the viewer that this person had just been popped and was now lifting even bigger weights than the last time they'd been popped.
Yeah, I think a lot of people skirt around the issue a little bit and just try and avoid talking about it because it's so controversial, and you don't want to get any kind of repercussions for voicing your opinion or whatever. I
think more people should voice their opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And when you're an athlete that has to compete against these other athletes that have served bans or, have got a reputation because their country has had 5 bans in the last year and they're now not going to the Olympics and all this stuff, it's very, very challenging. And you do, like, over the years, we have lost motivation. We see a girl that's 3 body weight classes lower than ours, lifting a world record, and then gets a ban 2 years later. It's very demotivating. Because you think, how the hell am I going to compete with someone like that when I'm, sticking to the rules and doing my best as a natural athlete?
Yeah, I mean, maybe we'll talk about that now. That was a topic for later. But so I think to myself, are drugs in sport black and white or grey? So when I think I'm a little bit older now, but when I was younger, I was definitely very black and white. And then I had some experiences, say when I was in America, I think I mentioned one of these to you, where say in the NFL, if you sign a contract in American football, that might be worth 20 or 30 million. And I would meet young men in gyms who were preparing for the combine, which is like the test in the showcase. And they'd be living in a 1-bedroom shack in somewhere like Mississippi with their gran and 7 brothers and sisters. And the S&C coach might advise them to take a particular substance, which they were pretty open about doing. And their rationale was, well, listen, I can get my family out of there. And then I started to think, okay, well, it's still wrong and they still shouldn't do it, particularly in sports where I think you're inflicting damage. So obviously in the NFL, if I gain speed and muscle, then the velocity that I hit somebody might cause them more damage. So I definitely am still not on that side of it, but I always thought to myself, I can understand that, but I am still of the view that, particularly in your sport, personally, I think people should be life banned. Because I think once they've used and achieved those gains, I think those gains stay with them. And people will have different opinions, but to me, it should be a life ban. I think that's the only way that you'll ever clean the sport up, because I think the science of drugs is so advanced, and there's all these Icarus documentaries and bits and pieces which kind of show how people do it, that I'm not sure the testers will ever completely catch up. So I think you need a very strong deterrent, which is that if you're caught, you're done. The counter to that is people that might have tainted supplements, which of course is what most people use as an excuse. So where do you stand on it? Do you think it should be life bans?
Yeah, I agree. It should be a complete life ban, because you see it all the time. You see lifters still at the top of their game, having previously served a ban. There was a girl out at the Europeans in the 59 kilo class. I saw her in 2015 power snatch 110 kilos, but she won the Europeans this time, having, served her ban and done whatever else. And I think she snatched like 96 kilos, so it was about 14 kilos down on her best, but she's still winning. So you can't say that you don't lose those benefits from whatever you've taken before.
I think the other thing I'd say is, I've been around a number of athletes in different sports. I think sometimes that the general public assume it's purely the athlete that's made that decision. That's definitely not been my experience. My experience has always been that, say, whether it be governments, whether it be coaches, whether it be programs, that they are encouraged in many cases to use these things purely because, as you say, the country wants to win medals and the country wants to be successful. So I'm probably, because I'm slightly older now and I've got children and stuff, I think to myself, I'm probably a bit more empathetic. But for me, it should be life bans. Once somebody's popped, particularly in your sport, get them out. No place for them.
I think the people that are sticking to the rules, like myself and my teammates, we get tested so frequently. It's only fair that the rest of the world does the same. But I do think perhaps the UK are one step ahead in terms of actually monitoring the athletes and keeping the sports clean.
I also think with regards to things like sponsors and viewers and getting new people into the sport, if there is a stigma of drug use, I think that definitely puts people off. Let's give people an insight into sort of, while we're talking about the sport, into like your training week. So obviously there is a ton that goes into it. How much time and how many days? Give us a kind of a rundown on what you do in a week.
So I often train about 5 days a week. I'll be in the gym like from 4 to 5 hours each day. Sometimes split that up, but lately I just kind of try and get it all done at once because I'm like on a roll, and then I can just spend more time for recovery.
And lately you do a much longer prehab, so you've been hanging out with me.
But I've also got dodgy knees, so I have to kind of spend the time getting ready for the sessions. Lots of obviously Olympic lift derivatives, hang work, block work, pause work, and then like some days I'll have a heavy pull off the floor, some days I'll have a heavy squat, and it just kind of alternates between the two. Well, you can explain, but all the CNS stuff. Got to make sure you don't batter yourself too much.
I think that's probably the point I want to get across to people is like, you know, having trained with you and spent say 6-8 months with you, I think it's brutal. It is brutal. The amount of poundage and of course the velocities that the bar is moving at and all the eccentric components. Your sport is brutal. I mean, you must be in pain. I mean, obviously at my age, having played American football in bits and pieces, I'm used to a bit of pain in my joints. I'm guessing you're in pain pretty much every day, no matter how many avocados you eat.
You do get very, very achy and uncomfortable. Like, can't sit in the car, can't sit at the cinema without having to like get up and move. Was
it always that way, or because obviously for your sport, and I think the lady said this on the commentary, you're probably quite old for your sport.
I am.
I mean, was it always that way? I'm a great believer that athletes up until they're 25 can do whatever they want and then get away with anything, and then it starts to change.
I'd say you get to like a 3-year, 4-year mark, and then you start getting all the pains. I've definitely had a few years where I've like not got much sleep, had to take like neural painkillers. I've had probably about 20 MRI scans, like all sorts of stuff. It's just something that you just have to put up with. To be honest, it's just, I'm aching, I've been working hard. That's it, just get on with it.
Or as I would say to you, no one cares.
No one cares.
Work harder. Simple as that. Okay, so I wanted to come on a little bit to your competition history, which I know a little bit about. You touched on Delhi Belly. Give us a rundown, because I know you've had some real highs, including obviously Commonwealth Championship and now the biggest high, I suppose, being European champion. But you've also had some pretty big lows in your competition history. So give us a rundown.
I'd say the first 10 years of my career, I didn't really achieve much, which, wasn't where I wanted to be. So it did take, it wasn't until 2018, the 10-year mark, that I started to actually experience a few more highs. But back to 2010, after that big failure, the next goal for me was to try and represent GB, because obviously it was Team England at the Commonwealths, and I wanted to get my GB kit. So I worked towards the 2012. I did a university competition in 2011, and then 2012 was my first ever Europeans. I can't remember where I finished, maybe like 9th or something. And then before I knew it, I was in. I had a chance to qualify for the 2012 Olympics, which I never really expected to kind of be up there, potentially fighting for a spot. Anyway, I'd made a decision not to move to Leeds, which is where British weightlifting had been based. I decided to stay at home, and they ended up taking quite a few lifters from like that Leeds group, and one of which was she was a little bit older than me, and she got picked over me, and it was all just a little bit political. It wasn't very objective. The selection policy was very subjective and just bit wish-washy, and so I got told after the British trials, I got told by the CEO to expect a call, and so that obviously got my hopes up. I was like, okay, this might happen. And then I did get a call from the performance manager, but it was to say that I hadn't made the team. So I had like 24 hours to try and put an appeal in, did all that. Didn't get anywhere, but I had also been offered a job to work with the organising committee at the London 2012 Olympics, which had been organised before these trials. So that was always going to be a thing unless I was then picked as an athlete. So I ended up working at this Olympics, like crazy hours, 14 hours a day, 16 hours a day, and then just watching everyone else compete and prepare and enjoy that experience. And I was like on the other side of the fence. It was really hard to take, but I was quite young, and I knew, if I kept with it, then I'd have a chance potentially later on, a couple more Olympics. But it was pretty gutting, and I could have done quite well in my weight class at the time as well.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting when you talk about being on the other side of the fence and that experience. When Mike was filming his podcast, he talked about being released from Southampton, sort of being told you're not good enough. And I asked him the question that, you could have gone one of two ways there. You could have really sort of thrown your toys out and given up, Larry Large, or you could have used the pain.
Yeah.
So looking back on that now, do you think that actually has sort of fueled the rest of your career, that feeling of, I'm going to be here one day? Yeah,
I think so. Because I knew I wanted to be one of those athletes, and I wanted that experience. And I know that was something I'd always wanted anyway, which just kind of reinforced it a bit.
Yeah.
And I
to
just
be that
knew,
close and to be watching it and smelling it and see the rest of it.
Yeah.
Amazing.
It was a really strange period of time for me. I wasn't in a great headspace, but got back on with it, and got back into my training and just moved on towards the next goal. So that was 2014 was the next Commonwealth Games. That was in Glasgow. So I'd had a pretty good build up to that, I think, except I cut my thumb on a kitchen knife about 2 weeks before I was flying up to Scotland, which wasn't great, wasn't ideal, but got on with it anyway.
No one cares, work hard at you.
Finished 5th at that one. So that was like a much bigger improvement on the previous Commonwealths, and it was like a bit of a taste of being a bit more successful and up there towards the medal zone. But it was also a time when I was like, I need something to change now. Like I've got to a point where I feel like I'm doing the same thing week in, week out, like the same kind of training. I could predict what my program would be.
Sure.
So that year we also had the World Championships, which was a really hard competition to do off the back of a Commonwealth, which has like a 10-month build up because of the qualification stuff. So I had to have a conversation with my coach and tell him that I wanted to move on and change coaches, which is always a really hard thing to do, especially when it's your coach that gets you into it. But he was quite understanding, obviously disappointed, but made a change and went to my next coach, Andy, who was also my husband Joe's first coach. So I knew he had a good reputation, knew he had good athletes, and just started working with him really, and started to see improvements in my leg strength, and my cleans started to move up. So I had a few world championships in that time, didn't do great. I was still maybe getting 3 out of 6 lifts on the platform.
Why did you miss those? Looking back, why do you think you missed the lifts? Did you miss the lifts because physically you were lacking, or because mentally you perhaps couldn't dial in as well as you do now?
I think I just lacked a bit of confidence. I wouldn't say I'm the most confident person anyway, but I think I really doubted myself at some of those events.
You looked confident throwing that 129 down, saying, you were very confident to me.
Yeah, I didn't feel it.
Well, you looked it. You looked like a full-on grizzly to me. So.
Yeah, it was I don't know, I just somehow managed to get into that right zone now, but I think all those competitions I did over the years set me up for that.
That was the point of my question really, again, was to people that are watching. I think sometimes people see champions and successful athletes and they say to themselves, it's all right for them, or it must, it's easy for them. I've heard this so many times, and I think when we talk to successful athletes, I really like to try and pull out the struggle.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about your European prep in a minute, which was the ultimate struggle. Don't think I've ever seen an athlete struggle as much. And I think what I'd like people to take away from it is that, like I've always said to you since we've been working together, I want you to get into this mindset of I'll keep trying until Whereas I think some people have the kind of internal language of, well, I tried it and it didn't work. Whereas I'll always say, well, you tried something and it got you a step closer, now try something else and keep going. I think your story, as I said when we first met, I think your story is amazing, it's inspirational, but it really does go along with all the things I really believe in, like perseverance. And I think, as you're saying, you almost said a 10-year period. You're talking about a 10-year period where, maybe you didn't achieve all the things you wanted. It's been so easy to get off the bus at any of those points and quit and make excuses, go and drink, go and do the rest of it, but you kind of kept going. I think your story is about perseverance. Now, you won the Commonwealths in
2018.
What were your numbers? No.
96, 126.
96, 126. And then you placed 4th in the world, am I right? I've got that right?
Yeah, got bronze in the clean and jerk.
And what were your poundages then?
100, 126.
Right, so you're gradually moving up.
Yeah, like kilo by kilo. The Commonwealths was like a turning point for me. I think having had to move country, and because I was living in Australia at the time. Move country and just like set up my life again with a fresh start. That just gave me confidence that I could do anything. So I've had a bit of an injury before that comp, and I asked someone that I knew, like an SC coach back here, to give me a program to kind of rehab me and get me back into a position where I could start a weightlifting program again. I think a lot of the old school coaches that we have in this country are they're great lifting coaches with the Olympic lifts, but the stuff around it to kind of keep you injury free and keep your body healthy is just lacking a little bit.
100%,
so,
I agree,
yeah, so he helped me out a lot.
I think sometimes as well, I think we said this in one of our conversations, this isn't to criticise coaches, because as you say, you've been very lucky to have some really good ones, but I think those coaches are under pressure to produce results and medals. Like Dodge said that when he was on, and Jeremy Moody, my tutor, always says the same thing, like you're employed to get medals, etc. So I think what they do is that they are always trying to add more and more and more and more, and be more aggressive and more loading. And I think they almost take the viewpoint that, well, if that one breaks, I'll get the next one. And this is not being critical, I think that's just the way it is, which is why I think sometimes modelling training programs on the elite can be a really bad concept. I think also as an athlete ages, as we've talked about loads, things change so much. And I think it's, the greatest ability is availability. You have to keep your athletes injury free, otherwise nothing else matters. And I think probably with age, there has to be, I think the program becomes so much more detailed, and then when you have injuries, so I do think that the pressure on coaches makes it just put more and more and more. We might talk in a minute about a lecture I remember very vividly, White Coat or Whistle, which I attended about coaching philosophies, and it was, look, should we just be giving people programs and say, do it, this is the science, these are the numbers, or does coaching need to evolve where we understand human behaviour, where we understand good days, bad days, heart rate variability, stress summation, which is very much where I am. Okay, so now you would have actually, am I right in saying that if the Olympics had been in 2020 prior to COVID, you'd qualified, am I right with that?
No, it was...
There's the Roby point system there.
Yeah, so there's been there was an 18-month qualification period from September 2019 through to April 2020. So we were right at the back end of the qualification period. Everyone had done most of their events. I think most athletes had one more major event to get as many points as they could before the end of the qualification, but all the competitions got postponed or cancelled. Right. Yeah. So it just threw it all off, and no one really knew what was happening. And you've got this ranking list, but people like me were sitting below the spots for people to go, and really needed another event to try and boost my chances.
Yeah, I should just explain at this point that your weight category, which is technically 71, which is what you've just won at the European Championships, is not an Olympic weight class. I'm right, 76 and 69?
64 and 76.
64 and 76, which is why it all gets a little bit complex.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, but they changed the bodyweight classes at the end of 2018. So so that wasn't even a great start to the whole qualification process for me, because I just felt a bit at a disadvantage already. But you just get on with it. Like we said before, no one cares.
No one cares. Work harder, princess, as I would probably say to you.
Yeah. So I had to do, in this qualification period, I had to do at least 2 events in the Olympic category.
Yep.
So I ticked them off, done 2 events. Just like, there's gold events, silver events, bronze events. I just did a couple of bronze events, I think, just to get them signed off. And then the rest of the competitions I've done at 71, because that is my body weight. I'm most competitive there, and I could get a decent number of points down there as well. So I had, when COVID hit, I had just done the Australian Open in February, and I just started to feel like my knee injury, and I was like, right, you can do this, you can hold on till April. It's only 2 more months, and then you can get it sorted. And then obviously I started cancelling everything. And, no one knew what was going on. No one had announced anything. I think the whole world was just, completely confused and worried about the whole situation. So all the gyms shut. I was still in Australia at the time. All the gyms shut. Wouldn't even let anyone in to do anything because everyone was freaking out. So I had to do like a little bit of training in the car park under my flat. Couldn't drop the weights, obviously. It was just not ideal. My training started to just be really affected. To the point where I was like not really doing much Olympic lifting. Decided to do a few CrossFit workouts. I just didn't know what the hell I wanted to do. Became one of them. And then I moved back to the UK like in the middle of that pandemic. I think it was end of June, start of July. Yeah.
Which really brings us up to date and really brings us up to the European Championships. And I think this is probably where I think the story gets even more amazing. So I think we met in August, I think it was August, just after lockdown. And initially Johnny had said, there's a very nice young lady who wants to come do some Olympic lifting here. I think you should meet her. I think I had baby food on my top when I met you, if I don't remember. I remember wiping it off as I walked in. And we met and we had a very basic discussion about Olympic lifting. But at that time, I would say my sense, I take great pride in a very strong sense, was that you were an athlete full of doubt, you had a hell of a lot going on, and that you were close to quitting. Is that fair?
Yeah, pretty accurate.
Yeah. How close to quitting were you?
Just kind of accepted that I'd probably quit a little bit in my head.
Yeah. So you talked about you had this dream to go to the Olympics, which is amazing. I think my dream as a kid was to play in goal at the FA Cup final at Wembley. The FA Cup used to be a big thing in football, and that was always my dream. Unfortunately, I missed that, kind of ruined that for myself when I was a bit younger. But I think going to the Olympics must be one of the most amazing experiences of all. And when we met, I remember very quickly making an assumption saying, listen, I think this young lady still wants to do it, but her flame is burning real low. So if we want a score of, say, 0 to 100, with 100 being I would never quit and 0 being I'm ready to quit, where were you?
Probably about 5.
Yeah. That's what I thought. Yeah.
I think it got lower than that at some points. Yeah,
when you had tears in your eyes and stuff, it probably got a bit lower.
Yeah.
The reason I raise it again is because I want people that watch this to understand that great champions don't just have it easy. It doesn't just happen. What you've been through in the last year, I think it is, or 8 months, 10 months, whatever, I think would have been enough to make anybody quit. So I want to make that clear, that when we met, my sense was, I think this lady who wants to do it, she's just going to have a struggle. We need to help her out a little bit. You had a lot going on at the time, and the first thing that I wanted to just touch on was your mum. Which is obviously a very sensitive subject. You lost your mum just before Christmas to Motor Neurone Disease, which is obviously a long sort of drawn out struggle. And my memory of that period was that the way you handled it was incredible, and that I can't imagine what that must have been like. I'm used to working with athletes athletes who come to me with problems like their agents trying to screw them, or their managers left them out on a Saturday, and you were dealing with something, real life-changing. Talk to me a little bit about sort of, how that process went. What I'm really interested in as well is advice for others that might be in a similar position where perhaps they're losing a loved one or a mum or a relative or something.
Yeah, it was a bit of a shock when our whole family found out. And I think, I didn't really have a clue about motor neuron disease, didn't know what it involved, how it would progress, just didn't know anything about it. So you obviously start doing your research and stuff, and I think once you kind of get your head round something like that, you start to kind of almost grieve, as a process. So I did a lot of crying and just generally trying to understand what was happening while I was still in Australia. It probably didn't help that I felt so far away as well. So coming back and just getting involved with the caring and just spending as much time as I could with my mum was just the priority for me. So weightlifting definitely slipped down the list a little bit anyway at that point. I just wanted to do my bit and basically do anything I could to help the situation with my sister and my dad both looking after her as well. So so I suppose in between just helping my mum and watching her illness progress, I wanted to try and keep training to a degree, because it was my thing. It was my constant, the one thing that I could go and do.
Did it become almost like a therapy, an escape?
It did and it didn't, because it kind of still, I think, must have reflected everything that was going on in my head. It became almost, I don't know, a bit of a battle itself.
It was definitely a battle.
Yeah, and it was just a bit of a struggle, to be honest. It was a time, you just go through things that you never think you will. And getting called out in the middle of the night because my mum's throat muscles were giving up, so she was choking on her saliva and stuff. It's very traumatic, and you just have to go with it though, because that's what's happening. You have to just try and help, and you don't even have time to stop and think about it. You just have to keep going. It was a very, very tough time for me and my whole family, and it just all progressed quite quickly in the end. But I suppose in the end, we were all there when she did pass away, and it was, it was the best way it could have happened in that sense. And I think just after that, I just felt so I need to carry on. I need to use this to kind of fuel my motivation, and because she was super proud of my competing, my events. She came to the Commonwealths and things like that. So, I know she would have wanted me to carry on, and that's what I wanted to do. But then it all just gets a bit much, doesn't it? Because you want something so much and you try so hard, it just ends up can backfire quite badly because of the pressure you put on yourself. As you know, you've witnessed it many a time.
Listen, I think that would be sort of my takeaway from your training process, was that you were never an athlete that needed to be bullied to do more. You were trying so hard. You were almost that stereotypical example of someone that takes the breath and then can't breathe because they were so tight. Is there anything you'd say to other people? You just use the phrase "keep going." You just keep going. When you're dealing with that sort of process, is there anything that you think would be of use to others? Any advice you would give them when they were going through that?
Just see if you can get some time to escape every day, even if it's just half an hour or something. Do something that's fun, that you enjoy. And if you are training, if you are an athlete, then just be a bit kind to yourself. And if you only get one exercise done, then that's still good. You're still making progress and you're still chipping away. Yeah.
So you obviously had to deal with your mum, and you had a pretty serious injury. which was another thing that I think at times you thought to yourself, is this ever going to go away? Can I get through it?
Yeah.
So what you've had, explain to me exactly what the knee is.
It's a Plica syndrome.
Plica syndrome, yeah, basic, yeah.
Yeah, whatever that is.
But the type of symptoms and the things you've been dealing with?
Yeah, so it's just I get like a really sharp pain on the inside of my kneecap. I feel it most when I'm pulling off the floor.
Yeah.
So squats have generally been manageable if I do all my prehab stuff before.
Yeah.
So as the load increases, it gets worse. So for me, it was always like cleans were the key lift that I'd feel it the most and would like get in my head a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just really hard to commit to a movement if you notice pain.
Yeah.
And that was something that was not helping my situation.
No.
Yeah, so I've been getting lots of treatment, getting cortisone injections, which have definitely helped, but they don't make the pain disappear. So it's just, I've just accepted it's something that I've got to manage now until
it's done.
Yeah, until it's done.
Until after the Olympics.
Hopefully, yeah.
So you're dealing with your mum, you're dealing with a really bad injury, and in terms of your training, and obviously, like you say, having been around for most of it, I guess that people would probably watch the European Championships and think that your training was completely smooth and everything went great and every day you left the gym buzzing. Why don't you tell people what it was really like?
I can't really remember many sessions that I was like, I felt happy about, maybe a handful.
Well, I would say a ratio of between maybe 20 days of sending me a message, something like, I don't know if I can do this, to one of, I feel quite good today. Something like that.
Something like that. That's like ridiculous. That. Yeah. I was definitely not in a good mindset.
No.
And I definitely felt more negative and like low confidence than I've ever have.
Yeah.
I think because you can't help but compare. Like I was in my best ever shape at the start of end of 2019, start of 2020. You just can't help compare yourself to like how you were then, what numbers you were doing.
Yeah. So to sort of explain to people, you'd get say 2/3 of the way through a session, be feeling good, and then your desire to hit that lift, I really want to get this lift because the pounders were going up, you kind of would shortcut yourself and turn it clean into a deadlift.
Yeah, I'd like high pull the bar. I think in America they call it clarking. There must have been a lifter called Clark that did it all the time.
Clarking.
As long as I don't start calling it like Godleying or something. So it's basically I was bottling it. I'd bottle my lift. I couldn't commit to it. And it was just like the fear factor was just there every session, without a doubt.
And probably what happened is the more times that you clarked, whatever they call it, the more that you thought, please don't clark, please don't clark.
I just became super conscious of it, and it just became a thing. And like every session, I'd go home and I'd start visualising doing it because it was that big of a deal to me. Yeah. And I just was so worried about doing it on comp day. Yeah,
so we certainly had plenty of conversations during that time, and one of the things I encouraged you to do was to persevere. And I also encouraged you to say, listen, I think you're a big time athlete, and on the day, who knows, it might just come out okay. But aside from that, you had some support from, I can't remember the person's name, from UK Athletics, the sports psychiatrist.
Tim Rogers.
Tim Rogers, probably fair to give these people, we'll come on to coaches in a bit, but just looking back on that, maybe saying to me once you thought they'd given you some good strategies that were useful. Do you think that was beneficial? You recommend that for lots of other athletes?
Yeah, I do. I mean, at first with these things, you think, like, why the hell am I doing this?
Because I bullied you to do it. That's
but you're just like, you listen and you're like, yeah, okay, yeah. But then I think as you start to give them a go, you work out, well, actually maybe that helped a little bit. I'll take that little snippet out of what he's given me and apply that today. It does. I think it did have some carryover, and especially the last 2 weeks before the comp, I definitely felt not confident, but just a little bit more at ease with how I was going to do. Yeah.
I think the other thing I'd highlight about that is what I've always said to you about supermarket theory. So maybe Tim Rogers, if that was his name, maybe that didn't work. but I would have encouraged you to try something else and try something else. And I think the thing I'd like athletes or anybody to take away is that sometimes when you're in sort of in a bad situation, you're not feeling great about things, you can almost wallow and do nothing. Well, I would flip that 180 degrees and just try things. Just, it might be complete rubbish, saying you work with a couple of other people, maybe that doesn't work out. But I think as long as you keep trying things, I'm a great believer, eventually you'll find something that does help. It kind of will get you over the curve. So your prep for the Euros was probably, my guess is it was the worst prep for an event you'd ever had. Fair. We also were in lockdown, so of course we were getting shit off Torquay Council for letting you in the gym. I was going to court on that in a few weeks, and so I can't think of a more a less than ideal prep. When you because I think a couple of times you said to me you weren't actually going to get on the plane.
I actually didn't want to. I actually wanted to run in the opposite direction. When
you got there, because I definitely sensed a change in you when you got there. When you sort of got to Moscow, and again you were in lockdown, so it was all a little bit different than normal, did you start to feel a bit more comfortable, like this was your setting and your surrounding, you knew how to do this? Did it start to change a little bit?
Yeah, you definitely get like a bit of excitement pre-comp, like, because that's why you do it, because you enjoy it. And you're with like your teammates that you haven't seen for a while, and there's just like a good atmosphere. And it was just like nice to actually know that an event towards qualification was going ahead. So it just felt quite positive. So just tried to make the most of that, to be honest. It's one thing I've found in the last few years is like when you see like a start list and you're up there, like your total is up there, like you could potentially get a medal, potentially win. It's a lot more challenging to deal with that expectation than it is when you're like, you're 10th best and you're just going to get the experience. But rather than be super nervous about it, it just kind of gives you excitement because you think it was a massive opportunity and I'm just going to try and like do the best with it that I can. If
during prep you'd felt burdened, so if during the prep phase you'd felt maybe that you were carrying a weight on your shoulders, which is certainly how it sort of felt to me, did you feel that now that started to get a bit lighter and it shifted from being anxiety to a bit more anticipation?
There's still always anxiety.
Which is a good
I literally
thing.
feel like I perform based on fear.
Well, this is one of our topics. I ask everybody this. Is fear a good thing? My view, which is that I think fear is a very good. I think I sent you the Customato video of Mike Tyson where he talks about managing fear on the Mike podcast. I wasn't going to mention this today, but when Mike came down to see me, he asked me about you because he knew we were working together, and he said, "How's she doing?" And I said to him, she's going to do great. I said, prep's been awful, but she's a big time performer. And he was like, well, how do you know? I said, just tell. She's going to do great on the day. Don't worry about that. But I said to him, I'm not sure she got my best. And he said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, Mike, I would always elicit fear in any of my athletes and pain. So with Mike, I would always say, Newcastle are going to sign Vidic today. You're out. What are you going to do about it? Newcastle are going to sign Rio Ferdinand today. What are you going to do about it? His whole career, and he spoke about it on the podcast, he used fear as a great motivator. But one of the things in working with you in the period we did was that you had so much real stuff that I thought to myself, the best thing I could do for you was to be the cheerleader and to encourage you, which is something that I hate in other coaches when people, are all sort of, but I thought to myself, I think this young lady just needs to be encouraged. That's the best thing I can do for her. She's incredibly hardworking. It matters so much to her. She doesn't need me to scare her or give her more fear. She needs encouragement. But in the back of my head, I was thinking, I've never done this with anyone before. I've always had them, create as much fear as I could. And I always thought, I said to Mike, I'm not sure if I've given her my best. I'm not sure if I should have made her a bit more scared.
I didn't need any more fear. No, thanks.
No, and Mike actually said to me, no, sounds like you got things right. So if I asked you, is fear a good thing? Nerves a good thing?
On comp day, yes. In training, not so much.
No, but does the fear and the anxiety, does it become a driver in preparation? I must do more, I must work harder. And in that sense, is it a good thing?
Yeah. I think if you've got that in your nature, you just keep going anyway, don't you?
Yeah. I think it's definitely in your nature. Definitely. You're tough. Yeah.
Well, I just knew that on comp day, with a bit of adrenaline, that I could do it. So I just embraced that, and as soon as I was feeling nervous on the day, like for the first time ever, I actually felt a bit sick in the warm-up room, but I was like, I know this is a good sign, so I just went with it.
Yeah, and, nature's Red Bull, adrenaline.
Yeah. Although my coach did tell me to, he went, it's all good being calm, but you got to wake up. I was like, I don't feel calm, but obviously I look it.
Well, you looked it, yeah, you looked it. So let's come on to competition day.
Yeah.
Which of course we were always very confident about. I was always very confident. Always told you how well you would do. Also going to talk about your teammates in a minute, but competition day. So people might not understand, but you choose an opening lift at a particular poundage, and then I think I'm right that you can then get 3 more weights. Am I right with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
3 attempts at each.
So you have to snatch first. Yeah. I think you were number 7. I think if I'm right in the list of 7th in the order.
Something like that.
So you chose 92.
Well, I had 92 down as an opener.
How many times in training did you hit 92?
Twice.
Yeah, I thought it was
once or twice.
I thought it was once. Yeah,
I think I did like the day before I went out. Right. I did it.
Yeah.
And I did it in the training hall 2 days before the comp as well.
Yeah.
So generally they'll the coach always keeps snatches quite high leading into comp because it is so technically has to be on point.
Yeah.
That you have to keep them
incredibly
the
technical.
Intensity up. Yeah. So I think I think my last snatch in the warm up was 90. They bumped me up to 94, and then before we knew it, we had no time, so I had to go straight out. But it was fine. You're just used to the rush sometimes, getting the timings right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the 94 looked easy. To me, to the untrained eye, it looked almost like a power clean type thing. It just looked easy.
Yeah.
Did you feel it?
Yeah, felt pretty solid. I was pretty happy with it.
Yeah. So then you get to the 97.
Yeah.
And you shit the bed.
Well, no, I didn't shit the bed. I didn't give it enough. It was just, I think I must have been a bit complacent based off the 94.
Right.
But that's I think you can, if me looking at my performance now, I can see that I wasn't quite 100%. But I was probably about 90%, if that makes sense.
So you missed 97 twice.
No, once.
Once.
Yeah.
And then you go up in weight.
So another girl, I missed 97, another girl just got it. So the way it works now is the first person to lift a weight goes into the top spot.
Right.
So by me trying to do 97 again...
Waste of time.
Yeah. So they bumped it up to 98, but I don't know any of this is going on because before comps I would say to the coaches I don't want to know anything.
Right.
I just want to lift it. So some athletes want to know every little detail. They want to have the conversation there and then. Let's try this, let's do that. But I'm the opposite. I'm I don't want any of that stuff in my head.
No noise.
Yeah, I just want to lift the weight. So they have obviously put it up to 98, but a Romanian girl went out first and got it. But they then had to make the decision: do we go up again, or do we just cement this 98? So I think because they knew what kind of build-up I'd had, they were like, right, let's just get the 98. And luckily, I woke up for that one.
How many times in preparation did you lift 98?
0.
Before you hit that 98, when was the last time you hit 98?
At my last comp in December 2019.
So that's almost 18 months.
Yeah.
So you walk out, you prowl, you do your prowl, you visualise, you look at 98. Talk me through the lift then, because it looked easy. And I saw a great clip on Instagram of one of your teammates had videoed it and was shrieking in the background. And you looked so aggressive and it looked so easy. Talk me through the 98, because I suppose the 98 was really what got you the gold medal in the end, wasn't it? Although you obviously had to do your cleans and stuff. Am I right in saying if you hadn't got the 98, you couldn't have got the gold medal? Is that right?
I think I could have, but it would have put a bit more pressure on me.
Right.
I think if I hadn't have got that 98, then mentally I would have been like...
What's the mindset as you approach that bar? What are you thinking?
just be aggressive. I was already pissed off with this 97 because it was just a waste of an attempt.
Right.
So I was like, just be aggressive and just go for it. You can't at that point, you can't overthink it.
Yeah.
As soon as you start thinking, well, I think it's game over.
Yeah.
So, I just knew I had to attack it. And with a snatch, once you feel it in the right place, you know it's a good lift.
Yeah. So aggressive and attack. I don't know who you sound like now.
Use the rage.
Use the rage. And it looks, obviously, I'm definitely an untrained eye, but it looked easy. 98. When I watched that 98, I thought to myself, had you had another weight to choose, I'd have felt pretty good about you banging out 100. Okay. So I think you were joint first or second?
Well, no, second at that point.
Weight second.
Yeah.
Okay. As you go into the clean and jerk section, and am I right? You chose 120 to open. Is that right?
122.
122.
Yeah.
And you hit 122 easy. And at that point, I think the lady that could beat you, she misses or something, didn't she? So at that point, you become the gold medalist without going any further. Am I right with that?
I think so.
Did you know that or not?
No, I don't like all that.
Well, from watching it on Eurosport, I think, and obviously realising now that you don't know what numbers are going on, you made your 122. Another lady missed a lift, and the commentators were a bit confused.
Yeah.
And then the man, who I don't know what his name was, who was commentating, said, "She's done it. She's done it." And Michaela Breeze, I think, was the lady who was sort of trying to work the numbers out. And then when you obviously came out for 129, didn't you?
Yeah, so the coaches were doing their thing where they were like whispering loads and trying to, figure things out. But it was more Stuart, who's my coach and also the team manager. He has like a spreadsheet with all the Olympic qualification stuff, like these big flipping formulas that give all the Roby points, blah, blah, blah. And I think he decided that 129 would give me a decent amount of Roby points to try and bump me up the ranking list.
Yeah.
So that's why, because it's such a random jump to go from 22 to 29.
Yeah.
And they're just my coaches were like, you've got to get this, like, everything into this lift, like, give it your all kind of thing. So
you didn't know at this point that you'd either won the gold medal or that, this was you don't know anything that's going on at this point?
I had a feeling, because I was like the last one doing the clean and jerk, so I had a feeling like I might have already won it, but I don't know, you just don't register that because you've still got stuff to do, still got work to do. So
you deserve.
Yeah, so I knew the 129 would be a big lift, so I just went for it, and I felt so relieved afterwards. Yeah,
I was actually in the bath. I was in the bath. My boy was in the bath. I think I sent you the video. And the commentators at this point do a great job. So having known you for a while, you always say to me, listen, if I can clean it, I can jerk it, because you're incredibly strong. I've seen you do 130 double on a jerk. And you do the clean, which I've never got any doubt that you're going to make. I'm 100% confident. My boy's watching from the bath. And the commentator says something really good. He said, just enjoy this, Michaela, because I think he knows you're going to jerk it. And you bang out this 129. And at that point, I think it was 26 years, Britain's first European champion for 26 years. And I think it was Megan Myrtle or something?
Myrtle, I don't know how to pronounce it. Ogie.
I don't get the name wrong.
She was an athletics person.
Yeah. But I think I've got that right. It was 26 years since Britain had a European champion. Obviously, your teammate, we'll come on to those in a minute, won the heavyweight category 2 or 3 days later. So incredible team performance. At what point did you know you were the gold medalist?
I think after that 129, I was fairly confident that I had won it.
But when did you see it that I'm a gold medalist?
Probably when I stood on the podium and watched the flag go up on the little screen. I was like, that never happens in weightlifting. Like, you never see the Union Jack at the top. You never hear the anthem.
How did it feel?
Amazing. But I'm in like a funny zone after I compete. Like, I can't access my emotions, if that sounds...
I think that's very common for athletes.
It's very, very weird. Like, when I'm at home and I just think about winning, or I think about achieving my goals or whatever, like, it makes me feel emotional. But when I'm in the moment, I'm like, just feel like I've not got anything, and just like in this tunnel vision. Yeah, it's very, very odd.
I think that elite athletes are able to kind of access a state, a portion of their mind that allows them to be elite and to do things that normal people can't do.
Yeah.
And therefore, I think sometimes, when you see interviews after teams have won a Super Bowl, or I think they always look flat because, like you say, they're just still in that place. And like you said at the start, maybe it still hasn't sunk in that you're a European champion. Okay, so let me ask you a very honest question. Did you think you were going to win?
No. Well, when?
When you got on the plane, I always knew you were going to win. I told you that from day one, didn't I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I don't. I'm just not that way. I'm not like, I'm going to win. I'm not like that. Like, I knew.
So what was your expectation? Might be a better question. Was your expectation just don't shit the bed, make a lift?
Yeah.
Or was it listen and get a medal here? Come on.
I wanted to get a medal. I thought I could do that. I mean, even though prep had been so rubbish, I knew I was strong. My squats had been good, jerks had been good. I knew that there were other elements to my training that had been all right and half decent.
Yeah. And
I knew that I was a competition performer, and I'd done that previously. So I think I just heavily relied on that, and I knew I'd get the adrenaline. So I just wasn't ever confident enough to be like, this is what I'm going to do. Yeah. So I can't say that I did ever feel like that.
No, and again, I hope what people take from this is that, preparation and build up to events, athletic tournament, football matches, it might not ever be perfect. I'm sure that people will look at you and think, oh, I bet training was better, everything was great. Well, we just talked now, it wasn't great, it was incredible. But if people would just hang on a bit and persevere and keep looking for ways to get little 1% improvements, anything can happen. I've said this to you, magical things happen when people just persevere. Yeah. And you're a living testament to it. I'm guessing it's your biggest achievement in the sport, yeah? Is it the one at the moment that you think that's what defines me?
I think in terms of everything like I had to go through, it definitely is one of the biggest achievements. But the Commonwealth Games was like a massive moment. Sure. Because for like so long, the breakthrough, and having like mum and dad, Joe, friends there watching, and having a big crowd, and the Commonwealth Games has always been like our version of the Olympics in the UK, because of all the doping history and things like that. It's been the only real platform we could achieve and win gold medals. So it's always been massive in our sport, like the Commonwealth. So it was just it was a really big moment, and the Europeans it was off the back of everything. It was just a relief. Yeah,
my adrenaline definitely didn't come down for a day or two, so I don't know what you were like. We should probably talk a little bit about your teammates, because I think I'm right in saying that was the most successful Great British weightlifting team ever. And I think I'm right, you had two golds, yourself and Emily. What's the other Emily's surname? Campbell, and Sarah Davies had a silver medal. So maybe just tell us a little bit about your teammates. So there's Zoe, Sarah and Emily.
So we're all four of us, we were the only ones that went, because we're still trying to finish the qualification for the Olympics. All three of them had pretty much cemented their place within the rankings, so they just had to kind of solidify that basically with another decent result. So Zoe finished 6th. She didn't have the best prep either. She was training in a garage for most of lockdown. And
she's 59, am I right? Is that 59 kilogram weight class?
Yeah, she lost a fair bit of body weight in not a lot of time.
Right.
Yeah, so I think she wasn't overly pleased with her performance. But I think it's definitely given her a bit of a kick now leading into the games.
And she's already qualified?
It's nothing set, but she looks in a good place. Sarah finished 2nd. She had an outstanding performance. I was sharing a room with her, and I was like, "Please inspire me." And she was like, "Don't worry, I've got this." She's like opposite to me. She's very, very super confident. Not afraid to show it, kind of thing. Just totally backs herself 100%. So. yeah, she nailed it. She got a personal best, came back with a silver medal. And just that gave me a bit of a boost watching that, because I was like, yeah, I've seen her struggle over the years, and it's taken her about 10 years to actually start winning international medals as well. So we've kind of grown together through the sport, and we're I'd say we're some of the hardest working weightlifters, I think, kind of in the country.
It's interesting what you say, you said that for you it was 10 years really in the sport, under the bar, before you saw any sort of type of success. It's also interesting when you say at these Europeans you kind of were able to call on previous experience to give you a little bit of confidence. And I think again that's something that people might underestimate, the value of just keeping going, just persevering, that maybe you had to go through all of that to be able to do what you did in Moscow. And it sounds like it was the same for Sarah. I watched her. I watched that, and again, she was amazing, absolutely inspirational. I would say, like you say, she doesn't seem to have any. Just watching her walk out and not knowing her, it never looked like she had fear. She looked very much aggressive. I'm going to attack this. I ain't scared type mindset.
No, I think she's she's had a bit of a rough time personally as well. So she'd come through that, and she'd got a new coach, and she'd done some decent training, and she's been lifting some mega weights in the gym. So I'm a bit different to her. She has to hit a number in the gym to feel confident. Well, this is my perception, might tell you differently. She usually hits a number in the gym and knows she can get it on the platform, whereas I'm 8 kilos off whatever I'll get on the platform. So she's just had a great build up, and it showed on the day. So
and has she qualified? She is qualified, so she's in. And then Emily Campbell. Is it 81, am I right?
No, she's 87 plus.
87 plus. So is that heavyweight or
super heavyweight?
Super heavyweight. Super heavyweight.
She's only been lifting about 5 years, and she's just phenomenal talent, works hard, had knee surgery less than a year ago. She's a bit of a unit.
I think I said this to you the other day. Probably the best, having watched the whole sort of European Championships on Eurosport, one of the best things about it was when she started in the competition, she just looked a bit nervous. I saw her with her headphones on, and at the end of the competition, she was bopping away with her headphones on. I thought, like I say, as a parent, you look at these, competitors, and you always imagine it's your own children. And I thought to myself, wow, what a feeling she must be having now. She just looks like she can do whatever she wants. She's confident.
She was buzzing.
So how many years has she been lifting?
About 5.
So she's gone from 0 to European champion in 5 years. How old is she?
26.
26. So if there are young ladies watching this at 17, 18, 19, 20, thinking, I could never do that.
It's never too late.
No. She's a prime example. And Sarah and Emily Campbell live together. They're training partners.
Up in Derby.
And Zoe is based
in Lewisham, London way.
Way. Okay, and hopefully all 4 of you will be going to Tokyo.
Fingers crossed.
I think
it's a bit more certain for them.
Well, I think it's certain for you, but we won't talk about that. So let's talk about the future now. So as you say, there's a little bit of a complex ranking system, and you have to wait for your official letter. But
people can also still compete, so things could change.
Could change. But all being well, fingers crossed, etc., you'd be going to Tokyo. So when did you first have that, say, goal or dream? How can you remember how old you were when you first said to yourself, I want to go to the Olympics?
I used to always watch the Olympics, but one particular memory stands out. I was away on a little holiday in a caravan with my mum and dad. I think all my other sisters, because they were older than me, doing their own thing, and it was just me. And it was 2004, and I was 14, and I was watching Kelly Holmes when she did the 1500. I think she's getting
Kelly Holmes now.
She is. Yeah. She's a bit of a legend. She won her, I think she did the 15 first and then the 8, I think. So me and my mum were watching her run her 1500 metre race, and watched her win a gold medal, and just the buzz watching her, and just we were shouting at the telly, screaming at her to win. And just I just felt like I want to feel like that. I want to be that person that achieves like that.
2004. So
Yeah.
that's 17 years. So like a vision and a dream, 17 years in the making.
Yeah.
And you have there ever been times where you sort of, like I say, where you kind of gave up on it, where you thought, nah, I'm just done, you know, I'm just cooked, or have you always kept the have?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Definitely the last 6 months. I've just like, I'd like message you and you'd message back, be like, just keep going. I'd be like, don't even want to hear this. Like, I've got to put my phone away. I can't deal.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. So I want to talk about your coaches in a minute and make sure that we give them a shout and a thank you. But we should probably talk a little bit about our relationship. We've been, say, friends working together for 7 or 8 months, whatever that is. So I'm definitely not an expert in Olympic lifting, not at all. But I would say that I take pride in maybe the white coat element of coaching, and if I can add any value to coaches that watch this, as I say, I think when I first met you, I could sense you as someone that was in pain, that had a number of negative emotions and a lot of doubt about whether they could continue. But I always sensed that you were a very strong, driven, aggressive. That was the real you, and that you would be somebody that, if I could encourage you enough to not quit, that when you got there, it would all be all right on the day. That was always my belief. And obviously, seeing you struggle through training was very painful, feeling your pain, you know, that was tough. But I would say perhaps our partnership has been what I would say to coaches, sometimes the best thing you can do for someone is encourage them.
Yeah.
I'm a great believer of that in parenting and then in coaching, not to be a cheerleader, because I'm not sure that being a cheerleader is always the right way to look at it. But I would say that the only thing I ever really tried to do for you was to encourage you, because I knew that if you could just get on the plane, I was 100% sure you'd be fine, because you're just a phenomenal, as I said to you before, you're that 1%, you're that the 1% gene pool, the Usain Bolt gene pool, where, you know, your genetics, you know, carry you a long way, plus you're just tough and you work hard. So it's been great fun, hasn't it?
Yeah, really fun.
Yeah, and I've encouraged you to maybe look at some other aspects that perhaps athletes, maybe particularly younger athletes, really, I think, undervalue. So, for example, one of the things I encourage you to do was to plan and to be very, very meticulous OCD about organising your weeks, because organising your weeks maybe gave you a little bit less anxiety, maybe gave you a better chance to recover and do some other things. So I encourage you to plan. I really encourage you to think about your nutrition in terms of being clean with what you eat, not just chucking calories down. And as I say, and then I tried to encourage you. We've done all right.
Yeah, I mean, it was still a bit of a struggle, but for me, like, because my coach, I've had this remote relationship with him for a few years now, because I was obviously in Australia. And I think just at the time when I probably needed someone just in my ear a little bit more and who was there, you kind of took that role. So you were like my coach, but not my coach, if that made sense.
Yeah.
So like he'd give me my program and I'd still speak to him on a regular basis. But like, I think because you were there and you could see what was happening firsthand, the encouragement was definitely helpful. It was just like the amount of tears that I cried these last few months are just ridiculous.
Probably every day, I would have said.
Yeah.
Probably every day. And that's why I was so keen for us to do this, because, like I say, I think so many people give up on things too early. And I think your story, your journey is just perseverance. Just hang. A number of times I would say to you, just hang in. I think one day I said to you, you can't quit yet, okay? We're not at that point yet. I think you were crying. And I think another day I said to you, I'll never give up on you. I think was another thing I said to you. And my point is, I think coaches sometimes just need to recognise that it's more than a program, it's more than sets and reps. I'm a great believer in that. As a coach, we should develop skills to be white coat, to be able to deal with people's stress summation and the other things going on in their life. And it's been great fun. I shall miss you when you're gone. Loads.
Not the mood swings.
Not the mood swings. Now we should probably say some thank yous to your proper coaches and the people that were there on the day. So Talk to me about the people that say organise your program in, and the people that slap you on the back and all that.
Yeah, so Stuart, who I mentioned before, does all my programming.
What's your surname, Stuart?
Martin.
Stuart Martin.
Yeah, and he also works at British Weightlifting. He's been...
And he puts up with your mood swings.
He does. Well, I like, as a female athlete, I'll be like, I'd have to tell him when it's that time.
Yeah.
And he'll be like, well, I can already guess that. Like, you get to know when your athletes... Shut up. He's got to know me pretty well over the years, and he kept reassuring me leading up to this comp as well, because I've not had ideal preps before other comps. He's like, remember when this happened before that comp and you still did fine? And he was like you, he was just like, I have 100% confidence in you on the day, like I have no doubts, I'm not worried. He kept saying, I'm not worried. And I think for someone that is so worried, to hear people say that back to you, like it's just that little bit of reassurance that you need. So he's been great, and he's also doing all the statistics and all this, so he's been really helpful with that as well. The two other coaches, Andy Callard, he's also been like my personal coach from about 2014 to 2018 to the Commonwealth Games. He would program for me as well, and spent a lot of time training with him, and he's just like a really great coach to work with, and on comp day he can just fire you up quite a lot and just get you going. Him and then Dave Sawyer, also one of the other national coaches. Like Dave and Andy have worked together on the national team for years and years. They're just a really good, solid team, like counting the board, tactics, things like that.
I never knew anything about that until I watched this event. But as I say, Michaela Bruce was very clear that there was actually like a game of poker going on backstage with, which I never knew about. So you're very lucky to have those guys. It
can get really like stressful if people keep switching, and then sometimes you might have like 10 lifts before your next attempt, or you might have to cut your warm-up short and run out and things like that. So it gets very, very tactical, and those guys kind of just nailed it. They've worked together before, and just their experience along with our experience, it just worked. Bit of a dream team.
They did an incredible job for you. Good. So I think this is the last time, and so is it one more ride and then you're going to move on, do other things with your life? So this is the last event?
If I get there.
There's no way that you might say to yourself, I've got one more in me, or is it you're at that stage of your life where you think...
A lot of people want me to carry on and do Birmingham 2022 Commonwealths, because it's a home games.
Didn't know that.
But I'm... After this prep, like how awful it was. Like how many times I said, I can't wait for this to be over,
Your favourite line was, I fucking hate this sport, as you had tears welling up in your eyes. What else did you used to say? I don't want to do this anymore, all those types of things.
You didn't see me when you left the gym. I'd be like that.
Well, I knew that every time you went to the ladies, you were blubbing, and I thought, this is terrible.
No, honestly.
But I
would carry on training after you'd finished, and I'd be like bright red. I was so glad it was lockdown and no one could see me. But
it makes it an even bigger achievement. So this one's going to be the last one, you think?
Yeah.
And is there anything that sort of stands out to you in terms of, look, for this prep, these are some keys? And again, I'm thinking about other athletes. Are there things you think, okay, in this prep I want to focus on X, Y, Z? Is there anything that jumps out to you?
I just want to keep working at my snatches, because if I could get a few more kilos on them, I'd be a bit more competitive in the next class up. Clean and jerks are pretty good, could still be better, but there is a big gap between them.
When you say working on your snatch, do you mean like I'm going to deconstruct the technical elements, sort of, there's a technical need, or do you think there's just maybe like a physical element to it?
Well, 14 weeks to go, I'm not going to make a significant technical improvement. Plus, I've been lifting 13 years. I'm at that stage where my technique is pretty much ingrained. But I can get stronger, and I can build a bit more consistency and just confidence through the movement. So I think that's what I'll focus on.
Is there any type of philosophy or any type of, anything in your head you think, as you say, my sense is that your previous prep was very anxiety driven, fear driven. It probably wasn't much fun. if this is the last ride, do you think this one might be a bit more go-to, not fun, that's the wrong word, but do you think this might be less painful, less stressful?
Yeah, I think because the pressure is off a little bit. Like, I'm trying to qualify for a weight class above mine, so I'm not going to be massively competitive against those girls because, well, if you look at the numbers that they're doing, like the medal zones, I'm not anywhere near that at the minute. And for my goal is just to get there. So if I achieve that and I get that letter to say I'm part of the team, then I'll know that I've pretty much achieved it.
You can get the dodgy tat on your arm.
I can get the dodgy, the rings.
Yeah, with some of those dodgy tats that you've got.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, so if the Olympics is the final ride, what sort of goals and that do you have, say, post athletics, post weightlifting? What other sort of things are you interested in the future?
So I want to start a family.
Simon's a nice name. Don is a nice name. Don is a very good name.
Yeah, maybe not. Maybe not that one. So that's obviously like a big goal, I suppose. And I want to carry on with my coaching. So I feel I can give a lot back to the sport, to other athletes, share my experiences.
100%.
I think even though I am coaching now and it is a big part of my life, there is, while you're still competing yourself, there is still that element of like selfishness and focusing on yourself.
Has to be.
And you just can't give everyone everything at that moment. So
that probably leads us into our event. It's a good segue into our event. So me and you have decided to run an Olympic weightlifting event at the Newton Abbot Club, and we've been very specific about the reasons behind that, what we want to achieve. So we've stated the goal of, we want to raise £5,000 for the Motor Neurone Disease, I think it's the association. I'll put the link in the show notes so everyone can see that and read about it. We want a minimum of 5,000 if we can do more than that. And what we hope is wherever you are in the world, because you might end up back in lovely Melbourne, I'll be very jealous. Every year we'll run this event, and we can continue to raise at least 5,000 every year. And the second thing that we're both very, very passionate about is we would like to encourage people to take the sport up. Now, whether they take it up very, very seriously or whether they just start learning it in the gym with one of our guys, with Claire or whatever, we just think that it would be great. And I suppose I'm always going to be more towards young people. It's my thing. It's 15 to 21. I think if people get into a sport then, I think it can have such significant positive impact on the rest of their life. It can stop them doing other things. So we've said to ourselves, listen, if 30 people take up lifting because of our event and we raise $5,000, it's a massive success. So our aim is to have an event that we're not sure if it will be, what's the right word, not sanctioned or...
like made official.
We're still in the process of doing that, whether it be official or not, but it'll be all the standard weight classes. I want to run what I call a beginner's class. So you would still compete in your natural weight class, but the judges on the day, if you're someone that's new to lifting, that's taken up lifting within the last year, the judges will actually choose that that person had the best technique, gave the best intent, because I would like to encourage people to start. Not just, I think sometimes when you run an event, particularly with Olympic weightlifting, people say to themselves, well, I'm nowhere near as good as that person, so I'm not going to take part. That's not what we're trying to do. Yes, we would like to have great Olympic lifters come and hit phenomenal numbers, but not if that means that other people don't take part. We want everyone to take part and to realise that winning is really about their preparation, their intent and their effort before the event. You'll be doing some demos on the day, maybe have some of your friends there, we're going to have some music, raffle, auction, but as I say, the primary goal is we want to raise £5,000 for the Motor Neurone Disease Association. We want to do that every year.
Sounds epic.
Sounds epic, and you will hopefully have a few nice toys back from Tokyo or something.
Yeah, well, that's the plan.
That's the plan. Well, that's the end of our podcast. Didn't do bad, did you?
No.
I don't think you even swore once.
No, polite.
You clashed with my t-shirt. We had the same colours on, but apart from that, we did all right. So in closing, all I would say is it's been an absolute pleasure to have you here at the gym with us. You have been a great member of our team and a great friend of Winners 2000. What's been great, we're in this business over 22 years, is we often have athletes here for a short period because they live in another country or they go to a different club, and they become very much part of our family in that I might not see them for more than once a year. I've got loads of footballers that I haven't seen because of lockdown last year. I haven't seen them, so they're desperate for the season to end to come down. And that's something I really look forward to. But you're definitely a big part of our family here. We used to have something called the Wall of Fame where we put all our athletes up there. You'll definitely be on the Wall of Fame. And regardless of what happens in the future, you know, where you're living, etc., you'll always be welcome here with us. And
Thank you.
It hasn't even been that much of a drain dealing with your fucking mood swings.
I felt like a proper drainer, I must admit.
Oh, not much. I'm used to it.
No, I wouldn't have even have got out to Russia without your support and just letting me train in the gym.
You're just saying that.
Well, it's true. Yeah. I couldn't lift in my little shed because I've caved the floor in.
Yeah.
And it was a vital part of my prep. And
I think a gym is far more. Some people think a gym is about the equipment and the walls and all that. I think the gym is largely an intangible thing. I think that when people walk into a gym, it should be a place that makes them feel uplifted, that they feel at home, that they feel safe, they feel inspired. And I hope that in all of our clubs, when everybody comes in, not just you, that it's something that you anchor back to, that you like being in that room in Torquay. It makes you feel aggressive and attack mode.
Yeah, 100%.
Thanks for doing this, dude.
Thanks.